President Trump is set to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte today. This ahead of a major announcement from the president where he's going to reveal an aggressive Ukraine weapons plan. Here's the president yesterday.
I'm going to have a meeting with the Secretary General who's coming in tomorrow. But we basically are going to send them various pieces of very sophisticated military, and they're going to pay us 100% for them because they do need protection. But the European Union is paying for it. We're not paying anything for it, but we will send it. It'll be business for us, and we will send them Patriots, which they desperately need.
Zelensky met with U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg this morning, calling it a productive conversation that included discussions on bolstering Ukraine's air defense and the path to peace. President Trump also sharing his frustrations with Russia and whether he's going to impose sanctions on the Kremlin. Watch this.
On Russia, are you going to be announcing sanctions on Russia tomorrow?
We're going to see what we will see tomorrow, okay? We have the Secretary General. As you know, Europe has announced sanctions. But I am very disappointed with President Putin. You know, I thought he was somebody that meant what he said, and he'll talk so beautifully, and then he'll bomb people at night. We don't like that.
Maria spoke with House Speaker Mike Johnson on Sunday Morning Futures about that potential sanctions plan. Watch.
80 senators or plus have supported potential sanctions on Russia and its energy. Would you take that up? Would you take that to the floor?
I would. I think there's a big appetite for that in the House as well. I think tough sanctions are called for. I mean, Vladimir Putin has shown an unwillingness to work with President Trump to bring an end to this unjust war on Ukraine. And we got to talk tough and we got to act tough. That's what he responds to. He's a bully, and if you don't treat him as such, then he'll continue to run his rampage through Ukraine. And we've got to bring an end to that. We need peace in this conflict. It's long overdue.
Joining me now, Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, Victoria Coates. And Victoria, I just want to put a finer point on what President Trump said. Putin talks nice, and then he bombs everybody in the evening. There is a high level of frustration right now from President Trump when it comes to Putin.
Well, good morning, Cheryl. Yes, there is, and I think rightly so. The president has been engaging with Putin since he got into office 6 months ago, given him every opportunity to come to the table, to come to a reasonable conclusion to this horrible war. And Putin's just sort of tried to tap him along. And I think Putin's about to find out what the Iranians found out 3 weeks ago, which is that's not just going to happen infinitely. And the president meeting with the Secretary General of NATO, coming off that very successful Hague summit with our European allies pledging to make 5% of their GDP on defense. He's going to announce additional sanctions. We have broad bipartisan support in Congress for this. And he's going to send additional weaponry to Ukraine. So I think you see his plan coming together here.
And, you know, there's also on the world stage, there's these ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas that continue to drag on. Hamas rejected the latest deal. They say discussions are on the verge of collapse. An Israeli airstrike reportedly killed 6 children at a water distribution point in Gaza. That was yesterday. The Israeli military claims it was a malfunction. They were targeting a terrorist. They did say the IDF regrets any harm to uninvolved civilians. A review of that strike is happening. But demands for aid in the presence of Israeli soldiers have been two of the main sticking points in these ceasefire talks. And officials are trying to work to get this 60-day pause. President Trump is still optimistic. He told reporters yesterday he's hoping for a deal in the next week. And we know, of course, about these. There were some more discussions happening on the sidelines of that FIFA match last night at MetLife Stadium. Victoria, your reaction?
Yes, there was some soccer diplomacy going on last night. But I think, yes, this is a very serious situation in Gaza. And, of course, Israel wants to wrap up this war. Everybody wants those remaining 20 living hostages to come out. But the pressure, Cheryl, has to be on Hamas. This is Hamas's war. They're the ones who started it on October 7th of 2023. They're the ones who are still holding innocents after 600-plus days hostage. And I think the message to our Qatari friends, our Egyptian friends who are interlocutors in this, has to be tell Hamas it's over. They've lost by any metric. They're the ones who are causing these civilian deaths. If they surrendered, if they gave up their weapons, that this would end. Israel doesn't want to be there. Imagine the aid that would flow into the Strip if they did that. And imagine the brighter future for the Palestinian people. So I think we have to shift the burden from Israel to Hamas here.
Yeah, well, and certainly the work that Israel has done has been nothing short of miraculous. Of course, that's all in part because of Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to ask you about this because when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, and I go back to that frustration that President Trump has with Putin, it's just become very apparent. And if you listen to him, Kim Jong-un is now saying in North Korea he's going to unconditionally support Russia's war. And then he might be sending like 30,000 more troops over to Ukraine. What do you make of that, Victoria?
Yeah, I think this is actually sort of ridiculous. I mean, that the North Koreans would be active in this war. What we see here, Cheryl, is the hand of China, because North Korea isn't going to stir a step unless they've got the green light from Beijing, or Beijing is bankrolling this movement of troops from North Korea to Russia. And these poor people are just going to be used as cannon fodder by Putin. But the other interesting point about what the president can announce today is the piece of this that is the United States energy policy right now, because that is all Putin has. He has energy that he can sell. That's his economic lifeline. But the president is going to come to my home state of Pennsylvania tomorrow to discuss expanding our production of natural gas. We'd had an announcement last week that Germany is massively going to increase its imports of U.S. natural gas. Pennsylvania can fill some of that need, and he's going to cut off Russian exports. That is the other economic lever on top of sanctions the president can use to neutralize Putin. And I think that is perhaps the most powerful tool he has.
Right. No, and by the way, I misspoke. I meant Kim Jong-un says he's sending troops to Russia. My apologies if that did not come across clear. Obviously, you understood what I meant. Liz Peek's got a question for you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Virginia. My question was also about North Korea. This love fest between Russia and North Korea is sort of interesting to me because on the other side, you have the Trump administration trying to negotiate better trade deal with China. So is it possible that in return for a little bit of loosening of the tariffs and so forth on China, that they may be stepping away from their support of Russia, and that's why Russia is courting North Korea so aggressively?
Well, Liz, it's an interesting question because the other reporting that we had last week in the Wall Street Journal was that the Russian economy has all sorts of red lights flashing, that they've been burning it at both ends of the so-called wartime economy, and that kind of accelerated growth through military purchases is going to kind of come due for them, and they could have some real systemic economic problems. The question then becomes, does China want to eat that risk? You know, China's been more or less bankrolling this for Putin over the course of the last 3+ years. China has problems of their own. As you say, they need to get a trade deal with the United States. Are they going to kind of cool on the Russian relationship? And I don't really see North Korea as an alternative to China for Russia here. They're more of a surrogate of China. They can't really provide Russia with the kind of economic help that China can. So I don't see Putin having a lot of good options here.
Victoria Coates, I hope that you're right. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it.